Yesterday morning, we awoke to pictures, to children
beautiful little babies
being carried in the arms of desperate parents.
These heinous actions by the Assad regime cannot be tolerated.
Less than a teaspoon of dry anthrax, a little bit, about this amount. This is just about the amount of a teaspoon.
Saddam Hussein has placed Iraqi troops and equipment in civilian areas.
Iraq declared 8,500 liters of anthrax.
A final atrocity against his people.
Donald Trump campaigned, made a big deal about how George Bush made such a big mistake by getting involved on false pretenses in 2003. But at least George Bush had the excuse of 12 months of sexed up intelligence. All Donald Trump seems to have here is he's going to war based on a YouTube video, for the most part, or a series of YouTube videos made by an Al-Qaeda linked NGO, which is funded by the U.S. State Department, the British Foreign Office, and the Qatari government. So it's, George Bush at least has the excuse of being naive, ill-equipped, and so Donald Trump will go down in history as ignorant, ill-equipped, and as naive, or more so, actually, than George W. Bush did.
Well, Donald Trump's intervention in Syria is in stark contrast to his stance back in 2013, when then-President Barack Obama was pushing for military action. Back then, Trump tweeted, quote, "The president must get congressional approval before attacking Syria." He also called Obama a very foolish leader for considering military action against Bashar al-Assad. And he warned it would bring nothing but trouble for the US. Okay, let's cross live now to Paul Antonopoulos, Deputy Editor at Al Masdar News, an online outlet that covers events in the Arab world. Great to have you on the programme, Paul. We're just listening there. Back in 2013, so some 4 years ago, Donald Trump said that attacking Syria without congressional approval is wrong, but that's essentially what occurred last night. What reasons could Donald Trump have for not waiting for that?
Time lag.
The longer that this prolongs,
with the voice.
The longer that people can make investigations, the quicker that the truth of the matter will come out. Now, originally, opposition forces wanted to say that sarin gas was used. However, within a mere few hours, we're talking about just a few hours here, this was completely debunked. So the white helmets, that are Al-Qaeda affiliated, they themselves published photos of them dealing with bodies without any sort of protective gear. Some people wore masks, but a lot of the times people were just wearing sandals and not even wearing gloves and not even the proper safety attire. Now, when we look at sarin gas, we know just within a couple minutes, it attacks the nervous system, it attacks the muscular system, it makes you release your bowels and your bladder almost immediately. You become very nauseous, you start getting induced vomiting. So they came out with the excuse. They came out with the story that it was sarin gas used. Now we know, as I said, within hours this was completely debunked by the own videos and by the own photos that they produced. So I think as weeks go on, this chemical attack mythology will be 100% debunked. So Donald Trump, if he wanted to be a warmonger and intervene in Syria, he had to do it as soon as possible, even if it was against the Congress or congressional orders. So he had to act in this very quick capacity before the truth of the matter really came out.
Well, indeed, it's taken just a matter of days for President Trump's Syria policy to go from Bashar al-Assad can stay to he must go. I believe we can just take a listen to what was said, Paul, for a moment.
My attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much.
With respect to Assad, I mean, there is a political reality that we have to accept.
I think the status and the longer term status of President Assad will be decided by the Syrian people.
Yeah, you had Sean Spicer.
Here in Turkey, Turkey's government is definitely controlled by our CIA. And like Israel's, I guess Mossad, I guess is what they're called over there, and those people, those kinds of people, which will murder people with a drop of a hat if they have to.
Enemy, it's ISIS. We must focus on ISIS. However, that's not how the U.S. foreign policy apparatus works. That's not how U.S. imperialism works. It's always You always got to keep moving forward. You've always got to remove leaders that are against your own ideals within the region.
Right.
We know that Syria is is a very important strategic location between
Turkey and all them.
oil-rich
They've already
areas
done
and the
that with them
Mediterranean Sea.
leaders.
So, you know, there's a lot of important
cooed 'em.
pipelines that can go through Syria. Now, Syria being a free, sovereign, independent nation obviously doesn't serve US interests and doesn't allow for pipelines that go from rich Arab countries. They don't allow these pipelines to go through Syria and onto Europe and serve their own allies there. So it's only natural that over time that Bashar Assad would eventually have to leave as he doesn't serve US interests. On top of that, we also have to look at the geostrategic part of it. So we know that Syria is a staunch ally of Iran, and Iran is probably one of the top enemies of the United States at the moment. So basically, the United States wants to break this alliance, and the only way that they can do that is by removing the president. So we always have to dismiss what any president says or whatever US candidate says, because we know what their end game is.
But it is so fresh in the memory, the pledges in the presidential election, isn't it? Two of the things that come to my mind immediately when we thought of Donald Trump in the run-up was bring jobs back to America, and also when it comes to foreign intervention, simply let's not have that. Those were the campaign promises, weren't they? That one particularly, not to engage in any foreign interventions, yet these direct strikes have been ordered against Syria. Your thoughts just on Washington's stance?
CIA with Hillary and the Bush families and that, they're probably against Donald. They probably egged him on with this. They understand how he feels about all this. And when he saw them dead pictures of them babies and stuff,
so we look at the
it hit him in
Russian
the
intervention
heart.
in Syria, and it was done accordingly to international law. Every avenue has always been through
CIA is like a movie.
Now,
They're like they have movie people now. They do the white helmets. They do all kinds of Hollywood stunts.
This is not the
So
first time that the United States has targeted Syrian soldiers. It's not the first time. We just have to look a little bit over 6 months ago when they targeted Syrian
they know how to do it.
positions just
And they're
outside
back
of
here
Deir ez-Zor. And effectively,
they contemplating these. That ain't what we're supposed to be doing.
ISIS
supposed to be dealing with
their
truths.
attack against Syrian army positions,
And then
and the Syrian army had to withdraw quite a bit because of these United States airstrikes. And in the case of Deir ez-Zor, these are airstrikes that went on
the
for
CIA
over an hour.
kind of
So for over an hour,
doings.
they were bombarding Syrian army positions
They
and
confuse
allowed
everything,
ISIS to
make
advance.
chaos,
In this case as well,
and
the United
play with
States
people's
has targeted
minds.
a Syrian airbase where Russian soldiers were as well. We know earlier I was on Press TV and I said there were 0 casualties. The latest reports is now that there's 4 confirmed deaths of Syrian pilots. Now, what makes this airbase so significant is that it was actually the main airbase that the Syrian military uses to attack ISIS in the eastern parts of the country, particularly around countryside.
Attack
homes.
ISIS.
So once again,
So you need
they're either
their
directly
CIA
or indirectly
counterparts
assisting ISIS by taking out
involvement,
15 Syrian jets,
so they don't
destroying the airfields,
have surveillance.
And this airbase was one of the primary
or
airbases to attack the terrorist group.
Yeah.
So this is a consistent theme, and it must be emphasized that this is not the first time that the U.S. military has targeted Syrian military positions.
See that? They did it so they can get in wherever they need to get in, because otherwise they could surveillance them.
Paul, we thank you very much for coming in the program, helping us make sense of what, as I say, people are waking up to the news this morning. Paul Antonopoulos, Deputy Editor at Al Masdar News, an online outlet that covers events